Yeah, this is Radio TV Phono Nut, and this box is supposed to contain a Crosley Bakelite case radio from the 40s. I normally have a no Bakelite rule when I'm buying something off of any of the internet auction sites, but this particular radio has a little sentimental value to me, and I'll tell you more about that once I get the box open. Now, I asked the guy to please pad the inside of the box around all sides of the radio very thoroughly. And judging by the small size of this box, I don't know that he complied with my request or not. He sent the thing FedEx Smart Post, which I call FedEx Dumb Post, because it takes longer, and that method of delivery involves handing the package off to the post office for delivery, and that just delays things. And on fragile items like this, you should really ship it the quickest way possible, because the quicker it's shipped, the less handling is involved. Alright, let's stop babbling along here and open this up and see if I'm going to be happy, or am I going to blow a gasket. Well, it looks like he just crammed the box full of saran wrap. Doesn't really look like he padded this very well at all. And let's get it out and see how bad it's torn up. Well, much to my surprise, it looks like it arrived unharmed. Now, here's the little story about this radio. Whenever I was 5 and a half, my grandparents adopted me, and even at that young age, I had an interest in radios and electronics and stuff, but at that age, I was more into let's tear it apart and let's destroy this instead of let's make it work again. Well, Dad dug out a Crosley radio just like this one out of the basement, and they got married in 1947, and the radio was a gift from my mother's parents. Sometime during the radio's life, Dad painted it red for whatever reason, and I think up until about the mid-60s it lived in their bedroom, at which time it was replaced by a tube-type Sears Silvertone AM/FM clock radio. And then this radio here became the basement radio, so to speak. Well, the Sears Silvertone clock radio probably lasted until the mid to late 70s before the clock crapped out in it. And then since it was an AM/FM set, it became the new basement radio, and I think this one had already probably crapped out by that time. And then the Sears clock radio was replaced by a solid-state Panasonic AM/FM clock radio with a flip-type digital clock, and that one lasted well until the 1990s. Well, I remember Dad digging the radio out of the basement. We plugged it in. It didn't work, so I destroyed it. And, you know, he didn't care. I mean, this was the early 1980s. It was just considered a junk radio at that point in time. Well, the other day I was looking on eBay, and I just happened to see this radio, and it clicked with me. Hey, that's like the one you destroyed when you was 5 or 6 years old. So it was a cheap buy it now price, so I went ahead and got it. Now, I haven't decided what I'm going to do as far as the cabinet. It needs to be repainted, but I've not decided whether I'm going to paint it the original color or whether I'm going to paint it red like the one they had. But let's see what kind of operational status this thing's in. First off, we'll take note of the crusty power plug, but it should still be safe to plug in. Nice UL approved plug. Well, we have bad filter capacitor hum, and it sounds like the speaker's shot. But it's receiving stations. Alright, let's open it up and see what we need to do here. I think we know partly what we need to do. Here's the chassis, just a standard AA5 design. This one uses octal tubes instead of the more conventional octals or miniature tubes that were in use during that time period. And I distinctly remember the set they had using octal tubes. I noticed this set doesn't have a dial light, and I looked at the schematic of this before I got the radio, and there wasn't one installed from the factory. I think I remember the one they had having a dial light, but that's been 35 plus years ago, so who knows? It's quite possible that Dad had a dial light installed on it at some point in time. I mean, it'd be easy enough to do. Here's our 4-inch speaker, and you can hear the voice coil rubbing, so most likely that speaker will have to be replaced. But I think pretty much this is just going to be a routine cleanup, new speaker, new capacitors, and alignment touch-up, and it'll probably be good to go electronically. Okay, things are coming along nicely. I went ahead and replaced the 2 electrolytic filter capacitors, and I decided just to tie the new ones directly to the terminals in which the old ones connected instead of splicing onto the leads coming off of the original multi-section cardboard tube. And I replaced some capacitors and resistors in the audio circuit that looked iffy. This is our AC across the line capacitor. It was on the verge of blowing out the end. This resistor here, our 470 k ohm grid bias resistor for the output tube, was up about 100 k, so we had to replace that. And our cathode resistor for the audio output tube is supposed to be 150 ohms. It was up to about 100 ohms higher than it should have been. This capacitor here connects between the plate of the audio output tube and the cathode of the same tube, and its purpose is more or less for tone compensation and to give a little bit of feedback. Well, the end was blown out of it, which is no surprise. That's a capacitor with high voltage on it, and when they get leaky, they blow up. This capacitor here is our coupling capacitor between the plate of the first audio tube and the control grid of the output tube. It was all deformed and looked funny. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. That looks kind of messed up, doesn't it? So I went ahead and replaced that. This disc capacitor here is a replacement for this one here, which is a 0.00025 microfarad. In this case, it connects from the plate of the first audio tube over here to one of the B+ voltage sources, and its purpose is to bypass any stray RF that might be on the plate of this tube. Otherwise, you'd have squealing and oscillation and other undesired effects in your audio. So I went ahead and replaced that with a disc. These resistors are all close enough, so I think we're ready to apply power and just see where we are at the present time. Well, that sounds better, doesn't it? Well, we need to spray this volume pot. Do that real quick. Alright, let's see here. A little hard to do this one-handed. Okay, that should take care of the noisy volume pot.
It remains short.
Well, that took care of the volume pot issue. Okay, we replaced the final 2 capacitors. This is the AVC bypass capacitor, and if it goes bad, it can cause oscillation and squealing. And this is our chassis isolation capacitor. One leg hooks to the chassis, and the other leg hooks to B- or circuit ground, and its purpose is to help isolate the chassis from the AC power line. It doesn't completely remove the thread, it just minimizes it. You can still get zapped pretty good if you touch the chassis while part of your body is in contact with ground, assuming the power plug is oriented in the socket the correct way. And then if this capacitor goes bad, it will Like I said, it will cause the chassis to be dangerously hot, and it can cause modulation hum, and that's a condition of where you hear a hum in the audio when you're tuned to a radio station. And we replaced the power cord with a nice new one with a nice plug on it. Now the next thing on the agenda is to see how we're going to solve this speaker problem. It's a 4-inch speaker, and they were kind enough not to mount the audio output transformer to the speaker frame. However, they weren't kind enough to mount the speaker in a conventional way to the chassis here. Instead, it's bolted on to this bracket here on the back, as you can see there. So we'll have to come up with an inventive way to mount another 4-inch speaker in here. Well, before we start on the speaker replacement, and while we have the loop antenna out of the way, I'll go ahead and clean some of the dust off the chassis. I'm really not going to scrub it, and we'll pull the tubes and kind of get the dust off of them and spray some contact cleaner in the tube socket. These Loctite tubes are notorious for not making good contact. The connections corrode and oxidize, and they'll cause a radio to be stone cold dead. So we'll go ahead and take care of that right now. Okay, here's the original speaker, which by the way is date stamped March the 22nd, 1948. That sounds right, because my parents got married in late 1947, October to be exact. And I'm sure the radio they got shortly after they were married was one from the 1948 model year, even though it might have been actually made late in 47, but this one was made in 48 based on the date stamp of the speaker on the speaker and the date codes on the tubes. But anyway, here's the original speaker, and you can see how it was mounted. 2 screw holes here on the back. Here's a electrically compatible speaker that I removed from a junk GE clock radio, but as you can see, it does not mount the same. So I'm thinking what I'm going to have to do is just screw a piece of wood back here on this bracket and then drill a hole in the wood big enough for this small magnet to rest in, and then I can attach it to the piece of wood with some adhesive or whatever. It's about the only thing I can come up with right now. Okay, we're back to operating condition again. And I used a little redneck engineering to mount the speaker. I took a piece of this styrofoam material that a eBay seller was nice enough to include with a package. You know, every once in a while I'll run into a eBay seller that actually puts some packing material in the box. Well, I cut it down to size, zip-tied it to the bracket, reamed a hole out in the center to accommodate the speaker magnet, stuck the speaker in there, and it just so happened that I had everything cut, so when I installed the chassis, there'd be enough pressure from the cabinet front here to hold the speaker in place, and it's good to go. Now, that may not be a permanent installation. I might decide to have the original Crosley branded speaker reconed one day and put it back original, but for now what we've done will work fine.
You were never more focused to play that one.
Yeah, we're getting some DX.
You were traded from, or you once played?
Get it off of that before I get a copyright strike. You know, I'd really get irritated with that garbage too. Might understand it if I was uploading crystal clear copies to YouTube, but whenever I play a few seconds of a song from a lo-fi AM radio or record player, there's no need in them getting their panties in a knot.
You know, I think his presence brings back an edge.
Julian is in California. What are your thoughts on using a secured credit card to raise my credit score to save on the interest rate when we buy our first?
My thoughts is not to use a credit card at all. And if you do use one, pay it off every 30 days. Those things can get you in trouble. Sounds like a religious station from somewhere. I have no idea where from.
Harassment or something, maybe.
No, in all seriousness, I thought about that. If this boy, and it would have been natural.
ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Come work with us. We are McLean Food Service. Are you a Class A?
Not getting much on the low end, but we have fluorescent lights on, and it's not quite late enough in the evening to get really good reception, but it's doing pretty good for a little cheap 5-tube set.
I've so many times now.
House by borrowing money. Will you spend a lot?
They put a team together. They think.
Fortunate to have a couple of music stations on AM that are somewhat decent. The Southern Gospel station and this one, although both of them play stuff that's not always to my liking, but when you consider everything else that's on AM around here, I'm thankful to have these two stations. Alright, that ought to do it. Thanks for watching.